Without Trish and Marilyn, I could never have done this wonderful presentation that you can't see. And without Liliana, who's given us the use of the room for free, you know, we wouldn't be here. So I just think that's fantastic. And I also want to welcome our new member. I'm not quite sure of your name, but Mark. Welcome to the Paphos Classic Vehicles Club. Now, before I start this, I want to just read you a little part of the President of Fever, his New Year message, okay? I just want to read you one little paragraph of what he's had to say in his New Year message. In the past year, we've made good progress in spite of the global economic situation. But we've much more to do to gain the widespread recognition and protection that we deserve as a distinct sector of the leisure and cultural world. The message to politicians and policymakers everywhere must be: give historic vehicles the space that's needed in policies and regulations to allow us to pass them on to future generations as a rolling museum. It's all about living preservation, which requires not only that enthusiasts pass the spark on to their children and grandchildren, but also that the businesses in our sector are given the opportunity to develop further. So that's the message from the Fever president, and there's 2 million people who are represented by Fever. Okay? So, welcome and thank you for coming to this high-tech presentation today. Has everybody signed in? I presume you have. I don't need to tell you, but if there's an emergency, just go down the stairs, meet on the car park, and we'll check off that everybody's here. Okay? That everybody's safe. This event is being recorded for YouTube. We were going to put it on YouTube. I don't think we'll be doing that now. On our YouTube channel. Oh well. This is a short presentation, and it's based on the Fever presentation that was given to all its members from the 20th of November over 2 days, and it was a virtual presentation that I attended on your behalf. So I sat for 2 days and listened to what they had to say. And Fever is the overall arching body, worldwide body that represents classic car clubs and the countries, and they stand up and be counted. I would appreciate it if there's any questions, especially about the technology, if you keep them till the end. This is an overview of what we'll be discussing today. Paphos Classic Vehicle Club place in the scheme of things. The EU Sustainability and Smart Mobility Paper. The EU End-of-Life Vehicles Directive. The EU Road Charging Directive. The General Economic Environment, our cultural value, and building relationships. That's what this is about. The aim of this is not to discuss renewable energy or other contentious issues. It's to impart to you some information which was shared at the Fever General Assembly. And I think this is important, and I think it's my responsibility to share that information with our members and beyond. Okay. So first of all, what's Fever? For the people who don't know, it's the Federation International Vehicles Antiques, and it's the overarching federation that represents each club can join together. PCVC and 6 other clubs join together to make our national federation here, which in turn is a member of Fever. Fever are the body that issue the Fever identity cards for your cars. Now I've now got 3 different hats. One of them is a high-tech expert on computers. No, it's not. One of them is chairman of the PCVC club. And I have to keep our members informed with these emails, newsletters, and things like this. I have to chair committee meetings, and do newsletters and other things. But I'm also the General Secretary of the Cyprus Federation of Classic Vehicles. So I take committee meetings for that and make sure we follow our articles. I communicate with the other clubs on the island, the 6 other clubs, and FIFA, which is the overriding body, and I check off and sign the FIFA cards. So I spend at least one day in Nicosia every week making sure that they're done properly. But I've also been appointed at this virtual General Assembly as the FIFA Technical Commissioner for Cyprus. The Commission establishes standard methods and rules for the dating and classification of historic vehicles. It's also responsible for issuing the identity cards, which are recognised all over the world, and they're a passport to some classic rallies. You can't partake in some rallies without those cards. That's all I know about the role for now. All right. So, Cyprus. Let's talk about Cyprus. Cyprus has quite a thriving, well, it doesn't have quite a thriving. It's a mecca really for classic vehicles, Cyprus. And FIFA card gives you important information regarding the age, specification and condition of the vehicle. And it can be important when travelling between countries, because if you're taking your car abroad and they want to check out, they're always interested in classic cars, and all the information's on that card, and it's very helpful. It's also the gateway to the lower tax regimes that you can get in Cyprus for your cars. These lower tax regimes have already been negotiated for you by the National Federation here. Without the National Federation going to the Department of Road Transport, we wouldn't have these tax regimes. So that's one reason why we should be in the Federation and have a voice in the Federation, because they do have an impact on the whole classic scene here. All right, there's no other way to obtain these cards than through the authorised National Federation. Each country has an authorised National Federation, and with us, it's the National Federation in Nicosia. Nowhere else can you get those cards, okay? I'm going to give you a little quiz. Can you remember 3 different figures, do you think? 1,350, 501. Not 501, 501. Those apply to the number of FIFA cards issued last year. Each one of those applies to a country. One is Cyprus, one's Greece, and one of the countries is France. So does anybody know how many cards were issued by Cyprus?
1,350.
There were approximately 500 issued by Greece, and France issued 1. So that's an indication. Those are FIFA figures that were given at this General Assembly. So that gives you an indication of the importance of Cyprus, doesn't it? Now I know a lot of people just want the FIFA card so they can get the reduced road tax, but that's not the aim when we want to give somebody a FIFA card. When we issue the FIFA card, we want those people to stay within the club and participate, and we're quite successful recently in our newish members have been really taking part and organising things, and it's been really great. So the club is thriving at the moment, which is great, and thanks to the members, okay? All right, now we're going to talk about the EU Sustainable and Smart Mobility Paper, okay? The strategy has now been adopted. This is not in the future. There's 3 key objectives to this. Sustainability means an irreversible shift to zero-emission mobility. All vehicles. For example, by making charging points readily available and making cash incentives available to purchasers and manufacturers. Number Number two, smart mobility means using digital technology and automation to control ultra-low emission zones and automatically billing users. Resilient mobility means bouncing back quickly from the COVID-19 pandemic, making a single European transport area so that the whole of Europe is accessible to businesses and its citizens. And there's a clear path to a 90% reduction of transport-generated greenhouse gases by 2050. There is more information on this on the internet if anybody wants to look at it. They've also agreed to implement the EU Road Charging Directive, or the so-called Euro Vignette Directive. There are moves to apply road charging by the mile or the kilometre. Stricter and more comprehensive rules will apply, and there's to be a new regime to tackle CO2 emissions, and member states will have 2 years to implement these new rules. So if you think Cyprus, it won't matter, think again, because Cyprus gets a lot of money from the EU, and that money will not be forthcoming if they don't fall into line. These rules apply to all the EU countries, and the idea is there will be a level playing field within the EU, so all businesses will be able to trade fairly in the bloc. Britain is also taking this stance on road pricing. Okay, the EU End-of-Life Vehicle Directive. This aims to reduce the amount of waste when vehicles are scrapped, limit the use of hazardous substances, and increase the quality and quantity of recycled material used. And the principle is that the polluter pays and the user pays. Okay, so that's the manufacturer pays, they have a responsibility to recycle those vehicles at the end of the vehicle life, and the person who's using the vehicle pays as well. Public consultations were held between July and October 2021. Legislation is expected in 2022. That's now. There's two of the issues, there's loads of them. The chromium trioxide, which is used in paint spraying, and it's also used when we're rechroming our cars, I think. And also the lead in batteries, they're viewed as problems for recycling. And do you all remember cellulose paint? Didn't we used to use cellulose paint? We use 2-pack now, don't we? That's to do with environmental issues. Okay. You can find all this on the internet. I'm not telling you these things to depress you. I'm telling you these things because it's things we need to understand. They won't by the time I finish, don't worry. Okay. Right, so the EU Urban Mobility Framework, what on earth is that? That means there's going to be more low emission zones. It means, again, that vehicles are going to be monitored automatically. There's not going to be some guy there. There's going to be machines in the cars, in the vehicles, that are going to automatically tell them where the cars are and build them. You're going to have to register your car. So there might be consequences for us. We need to stand strong and united and ensure we continue to use, repair and enjoy our vehicles. Okay? That's what we need to do. So we need to stop any petty fighting that's going on. We need to stay united and make certain that in the future that we can still enjoy our vehicles and that future generations can enjoy. Okay. Economic environment. We are right now at the start of what's known as a major technological disruption. And this is sometimes called the fourth industrial revolution. So what is disruptive change? Well, I'm going to tell you. It's when the established way of doing things undergoes a major shift. A good example of this is Kodak. They invented digital photography, but they didn't see the potential for it. So of course the Japanese took it over, and by the time the Japanese had took it over and continued, Kodak were left in the dust. Kodak couldn't keep up. There are many, many other examples. I was looking on the internet the other day about lorries. And all the lorries that we had, the lorry makers, Foden, Albion, Bedford, all sorts of these lorry makers we have that just don't exist. So, we're at the start of a transportation disruption which involves electrification, connectivity, and autonomous driving. I remember when car adverts said things such as this. This car's got twin horns. This car's got disc brakes, then servo-assisted brakes, independent suspension. Then we had anti-lock brakes and electronic stability control. Now, if you look at a car advert, all it talks about is connectivity. I also remember when I spent in car entertainment. Now it's internal combustion engine. The guy that coined the phrase Fourth Industrial Revolution is a guy called Klaus Schwab, and he wrote a book in 2016 called, funnily enough, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. You can look it up on the internet. This guy sounds exotic to us, but he's very, very influential guy. The 4 stages of the Industrial Revolution are water and steam power, that led to mechanisation. Then electric power, to make sure that enabled mass production. Electronics and IT, that's the 3rd one. And the 4th one is when all the new technologies come together and it blurs the lines between physical, digital, and biological technology. How does it affect us? We've got to contend with tariffs and customs delays. We've got more red tape to deal with as well, haven't we? And this is going to increasingly impact on our sourcing of parts and vehicles in the coming years. The effect of all this is that we are going to be inconvenienced and have to pay more. It comes back to what I said before. We've got to stay united and stand strong and make sure that our voice is heard. Okay? We need strong people to represent us. Lobbying. The international body FIFA so far successfully lobbied the European Parliament on our behalf. So far so good. However, the authorised national federations in each country also need to do their part. I'm talking about here in Cyprus. We need to explain and demonstrate that we're not unfriendly to the environment. We need to explain our historical value, cultural value. And there's no good shouting about it. We need to explain it in a calm way so that people can understand. I'm not talking about experts. I'm not talking about classic car people. I'm talking about everybody needs to understand. These cars were built years ago. The carbon footprint's gone years ago. It's not like we're driving around every single minute of the day in them, is it? So, and we need to be able to go where we want to go. We need to be able to go into these low emission zones. We need to have exemptions. The only way we can do that is by making our voice heard in the right way. So please try and remember this. Any person we encounter and speak to, this is every one of you, may know a person of influence on this island and be able to help by becoming an ambassador for our movement. The British Federation has recently begun lobbying the British Parliament regarding what a classic vehicle is. For example, if a vehicle has had upgraded brakes, has an unleaded head conversion or other engine improvements, will that make it no longer a classic? There's also issues relating to modified vehicles. What's a legal mod? What's an illegal mod? These things need clarified. The British Association have asked for clarification from Parliament. We need to do the same thing with the European Parliament here. These are important things. Okay, so what does this come to? What it means is us, all of us, need to build relations. We need to build relationships, including with non-classic people. This could be crucial in enabling us to continue to use our vehicles. Viva are starting a world tour of its representatives now, 2022. So they will be coming to Cyprus at some point. Its aim is to raise awareness of the importance of our movement. Do you think you can help with this? I'm convinced that every individual person can make a difference. So ask yourself, are you going to be an ambassador for our movement? Are we all going to be? Or are we going to just do nothing? Okay. Looking to the future. How can we ensure that we can continue to use and enjoy our vehicles? We need to secure supplies of fuel and lubricants for our vehicles in the longer term. Viva already has several companies, museums and other institutions as associate members who will be able to help us with this in the future. But we've got to now inspire and engage young people and make the case for our movement. Okay. I've explained some of the challenges that we face. Together, we can look to the future with confidence. I'm really sorry I can't show you these slides. I will send them out to you all, if anybody wants to look at them. I've explained the next steps, which in my opinion is that we need to improve our relationships and lobby the people that matter. We also need to make certain that we've got the same aims. Any infighting between classic people and the clubs, we need to somehow get over that. Our club itself needs to stay united. We need to strengthen our ties with other clubs and individuals, whether at home or okay, I've got two very powerful slides here that I can't show you, but I'm going to tell you about them, and I will send you them. We all know that horses were the main form of transport for thousands of years, don't we?
You can move it.
There's a picture there, New York City in the year 1900. Sorry you can't see it on the big screen. Point is, there's one car. Okay? There's a picture of New York City in 1913. That's 13 years later, over 100 years ago. There's one horse. That disruptive change happened in 13 years, 100 years ago. The pace of change now is much faster than that. Okay? So, it's easy to think this is all not going to affect me because it's all in the future. Is it really? Well, we'll see. I would like every single person in this room, when you leave here, to be an ambassador for our movement and to make sure that we're more active. Just before I finish, and take some questions if you want to ask any questions, like why I want the computer. On the 15th, which is next Saturday, I've sent an email out to some of the heads of the other clubs, requesting, well, inviting them to an open day next Saturday, so the idea, this is what I've suggested, that some of us meet them at Paphos. We take them a tour around Paphos with some photographs and a coffee stop and whatever. And then eventually we drive back to Pericles, where they will see our car of the month. They will also get a talk from Don about the new E10 fuels and how they will affect our vehicles. And so once I've got a good reply to that, I'd like some volunteers maybe that can come with me to Paphos and maybe lead a group round about. I'm going to do a route one day next week, and we'll see how that works out. But that's part of building relationships, isn't it? Which is what I feel we need to do. Okay? There was going to be a rally on the 16th, but just so you all know, that's been now cancelled. They're not going to go ahead with that. Okay? There will be a rally on the 30th at the museum. That will go ahead. Okay. I'm happy to answer questions if I can answer them. If you want to ask any questions, if you speak one at a time, and speak loudly so I can hear. If I can't answer your questions, I'll get the answers and get back to you. Okay? And if you want to have a discussion between you all, that's okay as well. And I'm happy to chair that as long as we're all, one person at a time. And now I was supposed to say, and we were going to, never mind. Now I'm going to say we're going to work on our technology for next time. Okay, so that's it basically, and I hope you've understood some of what I've said. I hope you've got to understand though that the future is rosy for us, but we have to make it rosy. The future is classic cars. There's going to be massive opportunity for the classic car movement. There's going to be more people that are going to be able to be in businesses, repairing them, upgrading them, bodywork, mechanical work. Don was saying, and he's quite right, if you recondition an engine now, rebuild it, it's a lot better than the original one because the metallurgy is better, everything's better. So there's a lot of opportunities for the people that grasp them. This is not a time to get miserable, it's a time of change, and at a time of change there's opportunity.